And Perry, I think my first question to you is, everyone's talking about being digital first today. Suddenly everyone's talking about digital natives, being digital first. Do you think becoming digital first or a digital first brand is key to survival?
I would say that depends, to be honest. I mean, it's pretty much the answer would be pretty much yes to the majority of industries or a majority of sectors, but some sectors still require to have a physical interaction first, like hospitals or sometimes beauty centers. But most businesses, like the industry that I work in, e-commerce, retail, all of those actually do require to have a strategy of a digital first, especially if you're targeting the more younger audience that is generating growth. And that audience does not know the world without internet, does not know, Gen Zers are digital natives, like you mentioned. They do not interact with any product or anything without actually going online to check it out. So I would say that the general answer is yes, that you need to have a digital first strategy to survive in this in the market.
And when you look at View, right, when you talk about View, how do you think of digital planning, and what does it really take to compete in a category with the likes of Netflix and Amazon? Where do you focus?
Yeah, our industry is quite unique, and I would say actually it's also similar to e-commerce because you're dealing with to a large extent, with all the complicated human aspects of your users, right? So when users are actually picking a platform to watch content, they're not picking it because of the old way of describing it as genre. No, it's based on my mood, based on the status that I'm in right now. Am I alone? Am I with people? So that all reflects on the way that we actually do our digital planning and our digital strategy in general, starting from how we actually decide on the content that we curate, the content that we produce, how we actually display it on the platform, how do we customize the experience. So one of the things that I'm proud of actually at View is that do believe in doing our homework. We actually do extensive research. We do our best to understand our users as much as we can so that we can actually tailor our experience on the platform to serve the users what they're looking for. So one of the things, like you said, that this market is very competitive. With the sector and our market is extremely competitive. So for us to actually have a good position in the industry, like I said, we have to understand the user. And one thing that we do that's unique to us is that we bring our global knowledge, we bring our global content, and then we introduce the local flavor to either the content that we have by dubbing, for instance, some content, or actually producing original productions that offer unique stories to the users. And then from that point onwards, everything is happening on the digital platform. So we use the technology from the recommendation algorithm to customize the experience. How do we actually retarget our users? How do we do our customer relationship management online so that we send push notifications, emailers, so that we can keep them coming back to the platform and even subscribing later on.
Just realized that I'm on mute. My next question to you is, and obviously this is around behavioral changes. During the early months of 2020, when the pandemic broke, we saw a close to about 134 rise in content consumption on OTT platforms. How much has changed in a year? I mean, what are some behavioral changes that you've noticed?
Yeah, so I would say there are actually two very key things that happened. One is that as people were stuck at home, they kind of realized that their only source of entertainment is actually consuming content online. And if you were to only watch the content that you used to, you were going to end up not finding enough. So one thing that we saw is that people started growing sort of their appetite or broadening their appetite for content. So we saw further growth in consumption of foreign language titles like Korean or Spanish. When we introduced it, they very quickly rose to the top of our in terms of consumption. So that was one thing. And then the other thing that we noticed as well is that we started seeing growth in, and that is sort of market wide data, that people started subscribing or using several platforms. So one platform was not enough because there's no one size fits all. And again, if you're consuming more content online, you need you pick one content from here, one content from there. And what by the end of the lockdown period, when it started to ease up a little, that challenge no longer became actually acquiring users, but rather retaining those users, making sure that those users that came to us during the growth due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown period keep coming back and keep using our platform. And one thing that we did, and thanks to, again, us understanding our user well, is that we started actually flooding our platform with new formats and new types of content. So we introduced a huge library of Hollywood titles, National Geographic documentaries in partnership with Fox Plus, and then we launched View originals that are only exclusive on our platform, so that we can continue to retain, that massive hype of users coming to the platform as a result of COVID.
Right. And there's been a lot of talk about personalization, and we're talking a lot about personalization at this event. We have great conversations towards the end of the day around personalization, and tomorrow we're talking about personalization. But I want to understand from you is, what does personalization mean to an OTT player, and what are some key engagement and retention metrics it can impact?
Yeah, personalization, I would say it's when you say it, it's kind of like stating the obvious, but it's easier said than done, right? It's one of the probably most complicated things that you do, because you need to actually start by gathering data. And a lot of companies, when they go digital, they don't actually build the algorithm early on to track the behavior that would help them personalize later on. The good thing for View is that we were born to be digital. We did not stem out of a TV channel, or we did not stem out of anything that's offline. We actually were born as a digital platform. So we do, the first thing obviously that we do is that we track user behavior, and then the way we translate that into a personalized experience starts from how, for instance, the content on the homepage is seen by you versus me, or somebody in Saudi Arabia versus somebody in Egypt. And then what kind of content, not only the order of the content, but also what kind of content. So in the UAE or in the GCC countries at large, we have a lot of expat communities. So we have a Pinoy, you can have a Pinoy or an Indian expat coming into the platform to consume content. Of course, the kind of content they will see will not be the Arabic titles. They're more likely to watch content in their language. So that's also another way of personalization. And then based on that consumption behavior, we start actually customizing what we refer to as CRM. So it basically, we push further content to our users, content based on what they've seen in the past. If somebody watches an episode of a title or a couple of episodes and they don't finish it, we actually tell them, you can finish the episode. Or if a new episode or a new season introduced, we do that as well. And sometimes we also go as far as actually offering special offers to users. So if we are a freemium model, so users can consume a lot of content for free, but then they can upgrade. Some of the things that we do, if we realize that there is a segment of users that are watching content for free, but they're highly engaged, then we can actually offer them a special price point just for this segment to encourage them to subscribe. So all of those things are just examples of how we personalize. And I think other industries like e-commerce have even a much wider range of ways to personalize the experience than even OTT.
I think that's a very interesting point, and that brings me to a question from my editorial team that's coming now. When you talk about mapping your North Star metric, when you're going digital, how do you think e-com players or retailers who are going online, what are some of the metrics that they should be measuring? I know it's a learning process before you say, okay, this is my North Star metric, but how does a marketer really go about with the entire process when it's going digital?
So, e-commerce or not, anybody that's going digital, the first thing that they really need to do is map out the user journey, right? So, what are the steps that the user would go for? And then at every step of that journey, you actually come up with metrics that you measure to, one, measure the performance, and two, customize the experience. And I cannot stress more by actually saying that it's the most crucial step in that is actually the onboarding process. This is when you get your user excited, and this is when you get a chance to actually tell them what you're offering, and you get them or you give them a sense of how easy it could be to actually get the value that you're offering. So some of those metrics would be, how much time people are actually spending browsing pages of your products. How many products are they actually browsing? The kinds of those products, understanding, trying to understand the user a little bit. Something for e-commerce specifically, which is extremely important, but not everybody does, is even looking at how users sort the products. Because, if you sort the products based on price low to high, you're probably looking for a bargain deal. But if you do the opposite, you're looking for quality over price. So that also helps you understand the kind of user and who do you push discounted price to versus others. Another thing as well is, and that also is specific to e-commerce, is how many users end up abandoning the shopping cart, right? So the last global metric, and I would say the Middle East, it's a much higher, is that 65% of users end up abandoning the shopping cart. That means that only 35 people globally that spend hours on an e-commerce platform browsing products, putting it in a shopping cart, end up eventually buying it. So you need to understand that kind of metric for you as well. What is your cart abandonment rate? Typically anything under 40 is good. If you get to 20, you're an amazing, platform. But that also helps you to retarget your users. So if somebody got interested, in a pair of shoes, put it in a shopping cart, didn't buy it, it doesn't mean they don't want to buy it. They probably just want to look on other platforms. Can they find it better? They want to ask somebody, they were on a card, they want to pay, put in the credit card or anything. So if you retarget them through different, tools, you might actually increase your conversion rate. So that's also another thing. And lastly is, you need to also track the drop off rate in every step of the way. So, from the second that somebody actually browses the product and likes it, picks certain features, goes to the billing page or goes to puts it in shopping cart, adds credit card, all of that until actually they check out, you need to see what is the drop off rate at every step of the way, because that gives you a strong indication of where could there be a problem. And the key thing to think of is, the lesser the steps users have to go through from choosing something to buying, the better. So yeah, those are some metrics.
And when you talk about technology, right, and particularly talking about AI and ML, how can we use these technologies to leverage, deploy personalized content recommendations across digital touchpoints?
Yeah, so there's so many things. One of the things for our industry that tends to be very useful is actually looking at user behavior on social media as well, because like I said, we do deal with users as humans, and people show their most human aspect on social media. And it's also the platform where we do most of our performance marketing or digital marketing as well. So there's a lot of great synergy between what users show interest in and what users actually do on social media compared to what they do on our platform. So that is, that's when we use, AI or basically machine learning to kind of like connect those kind of audiences and create lookalikes so that we can offer that kind of personalized experience based on our knowledge for those users, not just on the platform, but also on other platforms as well. Some other tools that you can use is what's generally known as a recommendation algorithm or a recommendation engine, right? So, and I would say that Netflix is the guru of that. They were the first to introduce it in such a very complicated and efficient way, which is basically that based on your behavior as an individual on the platform, nothing on the platform that you see is manual. Everything is actually based on your behavior, 100% based on that, and that requires actually data scientists actually putting in a lot of information together and creating those kind of models. But then the algorithm absorbs that data science behind it and that model and starts customizing that data at a rate of millions of versions. I think probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I read that Netflix has over 100,000 subgenre. Just because that many people, and probably that number is much bigger, that many people are actually using it. And this is one thing that we actually do as well. So our platform has part that's manually curated and part that's automatically curated based on the algorithm, based on your behavior. And that is all dependent on technology. Yes, there is a human aspect in it, but it's 100% dependent on technology. And sometimes we just get to learn things that we didn't know would be the case.
Right. And rightly said so, Perry. I think we have one question that we can take. I'm just going to read off my tab. It says, do you also think there is a roadmap needed for bringing your executive leadership up to date with digital strategy and the evolution?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, your executive leadership needs to be on board with going for digital transformation. With one looking at the data, providing proof for growth, and most importantly is actually coming up with a solid roadmap, right? So if the leadership is not on board with that, it's going to be an issue because you're going to keep facing roadblocks along the way. So if somebody is facing challenges with that, there is an abundance of data. There's also one of the good things that I personally have done over my career several times is doing hacks. It's just experimentation and showing what kind of growth or what kind of impact you can see just by testing a little bit of digitization and then taking it at a bigger scale.